Well, Kieran, this town is now full of analysis as to what impact Superstorm Sandy is going to have on this presidential race, which now has only days to go. Barack Obama's been focused, as we know, the last few days, purely on the storm and the recovery efforts. He'll return to official campaign duties from tomorrow. There's no doubt, though, that what he has been doing in the last few days has helped him enormously. The sort of images that money just cannot buy, despite the billions that have been spent, no doubt, in this election contest. The president toured those devastated parts of New Jersey with the New Jersey Governor, Chris Christie, at his side. Someone who's been very critical of him during the campaign, but the two of them now showing, well, quite a bromance in the sort of stuff they're saying about each other. Republicans not entirely comfortable with Chris Christie being so effusive in his praise of President Obama this close to the election. But what can they do? He is a governor and he has an eye on presidential ambition himself down the track. This show of bipartisanship, putting politics to one side and focusing on the emergency efforts, is a very important thing for him to do right now. As for Mitt Romney, well, he did resume campaigning today, but look, he's certainly not getting the attention here that the president is at the moment. The latest polls show this is still absolutely deadlocked, 49% each for Obama and Romney. But the same poll shows, when people ask what they think of the president's handling of this crisis, strong support. Nearly 80% think his handling has been either excellent or good. We'll see how that plays out in the coming polls in the next few days. To look at what this presidential race means for Australia, given the slight differences we have on foreign policy from the two candidates, and in particular the concerns Mitt Romney's been raising about China, I spoke to Australia's ambassador to Washington, Kim Beazley, a little earlier today. Well, Mr. Ambassador, welcome. Can I start by asking what you think is at stake for Australia and for Australians in this presidential election?
There's always a lot at stake for Australia in every presidential election. In that sense, this is not special. The United States is our principal ally, critical to us in the military and intelligence area, also important to us diplomatically. Who heads up the United States and the policy directions in which he or she chooses to go is always going to be a major focus of interest in the Australian political system. And this election's no different.
Well, the Treasurer and Deputy Prime Minister Wayne Swan said not all that long ago that cranks and crazies had taken over the Republican Party. Was he right about that? Should we be worried about that?
Look, as far as we're concerned, here at this embassy, what we do is we relate to both the major parties in the American political process. Our conversation with Republicans, our conversations with Democrats have always been frank and to the point and enormously helpful. So we are confident here at this embassy, whether Governor Romney wins or President Obama wins, we will have access to policymakers in a way that ensures that Australian views are put on the table.
So let's turn to a couple of specific issues. Afghanistan. Now, this has been the longest war that this country's been involved in, that Australia's been involved in as well. Yet it's barely discussed in this election campaign. Does that concern you at all?
No, it doesn't. It is an indication of the fact that the American people basically accept, as both President Obama has said and Governor Romney has said, that their involvement in Afghanistan is going on to a different basis, that their combat engagement is gradually being phased out. They have confidence in the Afghan National Security Forces that they will be able to take the lead on security, and this will happen over the course of the next 18 months, and then what's left is a sort of training and assistance agenda, which all countries, we have indicated, we'll persist with that, and so will the Americans. So you only really get political dispute in this country about an unsettled matter. This is not an unsettled matter.
So there won't be
People
much
know where
difference
they're going.
There won't be much difference between Obama and Romney on that.
Well, if you went, as I did, to listen to the last debate, which was on foreign policy, it was pretty clear there was not much difference between them on that subject.
What happens after 2014, given all that we've lost in lives and in treasure in Afghanistan, if things don't go as planned? You know, we've invested a lot in success here in Afghanistan.
Yes, we have invested a lot, and we've invested the most precious things of all. 39 of our own people have been invested in Afghanistan. I think there's a determination, insofar as we can, and we are not the main player, that we should try to do the things that give them the best chance possible. Obviously recognising you can't do everything and you can't count for every potential possibility, but we're giving it the best shot. That's a very generous Australian aid contribution and a very generous contribution to the Afghan National Security Forces, and an indication that there is the possibility of a continuing contribution in trainers. So you've got to say that we've invested a lot. All we can do is hope that that works, our allies' contribution works, and that there's a decent response from the Afghan people and the Afghan government that at least makes a serious attempt at good democratic practice.
Now, you mentioned that foreign policy debate between the two presidential candidates. One of the main points of attack from Governor Romney on the president is that American prestige has somehow been diminished in the Middle East, despite ending the war in Iraq and getting Osama bin Laden. His argument is that American power isn't perhaps as respected as it was 4 years ago. Do you agree with that?
Look, I'm not here to run a commentary on the ongoing processes of political debate in this country. Were an American ambassador to do it during an Australian election, Australians would be rightly offended. And obviously, in any political campaign, the two sides are going to go in for a degree of product differentiation. Let me just say this about the administration and what we'd anticipate in a future administration. We have been given no reason to believe that the Americans aren't going to be out there assuming a leadership role in international affairs, no matter what the election outcome is. We've been given no reason to believe that they won't value their allies, and we've been given no reason to believe that they won't be having conversations with people other than their allies to ensure that the sorts of values that they represent in international politics at least have a chance for more general adherence. Now, what comes of all of that, we shall see.
But as a general observation, is the US standing in the world any weaker or stronger than it was 4 or 5 years ago?
The US standing is immensely powerful. Global politics changes over time. We're witnessing now the simultaneous rise of a large number of powers. But the judgment that was made, I think it was attributed at one point to Hillary Clinton, it may have been made by others, and that is the US is the one indispensable power. That remains. That was the case previously and will be the case after this election.
Let me take you to the Asian Century White Paper the Gillard government has released this week. One of the, I guess, fairly obvious points it makes is that maintaining stable relations between the big powers, including the US and China, is fundamental to stability, prosperity in the region. How confident are you that over the long term that relationship will remain stable? Or stable enough?
Look, one of the things about Australia, our strong suit, if you like, at the moment in our alliance relationship with the US is our ability to intermesh with the Asian region. The Asian region is immensely significant in the, as that paper pointed out, as the focal point of international politics. And we are good players, constructive players in the Asia-Pacific region. And that's valuable to the United States. Now, as regards the United States, they do understand, and they repeatedly reiterate in their different ways, that the dialogue that the United States has between itself and China is absolutely critical, and increasingly that despite the capacity of the Middle East to constantly drag in and draw attention to itself for decision makers in the US and elsewhere, despite that, that they have to assign an overwhelming priority to their relationships in the region. There is a desire for stability. There is an understanding that stability is an essential part of the economic progress of the region, and there is an understanding that the economic progress of the region determines the dynamism of the global economy overall, in which we're all interested. And that's not to say there aren't going to be disagreements, that's not to say there's not going to be a lot of positioning, but that's the overall motive.
Well, we have heard both President Obama and Governor Romney beating up on China a bit during this campaign, saying they're trade cheats, particularly Governor Romney, trade cheats, currency manipulators. Is that just part of what you're talking about there?
Well, you know, compared to previous campaigns, this has been quite mild.
In relation to China.
In relation to China. That obviously means there's a lot of other issues knocking around.
But it's just campaign talk, is it?
It's also true, too, that there's been... the major objection was currency manipulation, allegedly, on the part of the Chinese. The Chinese currency has been appreciating against the US dollar over the course of the last few years. So
they don't mention that here, do they?
Some of that pressure is off. I thought in the foreign affairs debate, Governor Romney actually made a bit clear that, as far as he's concerned, perhaps things were changing a little there.
But his TV ads are still pretty bellicose, aren't they?
Yeah, there is, but you've watched TV probably as avidly as I have over the course of the last 6 weeks. There has been a plethora of negative advertising on both sides. I would say that those elements which actually mention China would probably constitute about 2 or 3%. It's not that big a deal.
I just finally want to ask you, Kim Beazley, how much are you enjoying this job? You do seem to be in your element.
This job's relentless. Let me tell you this, it's much better being a minister. The decision ends with you.
Right.
When you're a public servant, as I am now, you're a cog in the machine, albeit a cog in a very important part of the machine. But at the end of the day, it's the minister and the government who make decisions, who explain the decisions. All you can do is to have a bit of an input.
Have you struggled with that at all? Not being the one who calls the shots at the end of the day?
Well, of course I struggle with that, but I'm benefited by one thing. I have always thought the Australian public service was good, but I did not know how good it was until I came to work at an embassy where I think there's well over a dozen agencies here. And they're just superb people, superb foreign affairs and trade, superb defence, superb people in agriculture, superb people in customs and intelligence and so on. We have really good public servants. And it's a very interesting intellectual environment.
It's also been reported this week that funding for the Foreign Affairs Department hasn't risen in real terms for 10 years. I mean, would you like more of those wonderful people you talk about?
Well, I think that any additional expenditures on the Foreign Affairs Department would not be wasted.
On that note, Kim Beazley, thank you.